the mouse controls over to Angie, and we will get started. So thank you for your time, and here we go. Angie? So, go ahead.
All right, good afternoon. So my name is Angie Schott-Muller, so I'll be going through some conversion tricks here with you this afternoon. Had some font tweaks between systems here, so bear with the display details. So I lead optimization for 3Deep, which includes search optimization and conversion optimization. I'm presented at several online marketing conferences. So when we talk about conversion pieces, or when I'm referencing conversion and getting started in these factors, first I'd like to define a conversion. And a lot of times people think of a conversion as a sale. So kind of like to reset the stage on that to start with, to say that conversion really is just completion of a presented action. So if you ask someone to watch a video or even RSVP on a direct mail piece, you've presented an action. The question is how many completed the action when we're thinking through those. So that's when I'm referring to conversion optimization, is trying to determine how to get more people to take the actions that you've presented, and also prioritizing the specific action you want them to take so you can get more people to take that action. So the first key point or factor to incorporate is user-centered strategy when you're thinking about conversion. So when you're thinking about your goals and how you're trying to get people to take action, a lot of times it's easy to focus on business goals versus necessarily the user goals. But since conversion really is a factor of how we can make people take those actions, we need to learn how to persuade and influence them. And to understand that, we really need to help them achieve their goals first. So when you're thinking about your business goals, if the user is trying to complete their task and in their mind they have their goal in mind, what we really need to do is reevaluate our goals to say, what goal does the user want to accomplish? So if they need to look financially responsible in front of their spouse, or if their desire is to look like they understand the latest styles and trends, or that they're energy efficient and concerned about those factors, then those need to become your goals. You need to evaluate, well, how do we help the user look like they're, financially responsible for their spouse, or green friendly, or those different components. Take those on versus saying we want to complete these, because by helping the user achieve their goals, you in turn will achieve yours. When we're thinking about how to be influential, very interesting methodology that was developed by Brian and Jeffrey Eisenberg, first came out in their book, Waiting for Your Cat to Bark, was to consider some buyer or decision-making persona types, that the pace at which individuals make decisions, as well as how much logic or emotion, whether that's fact or feeling, that goes into those pieces, changes. And in each scenario, sometimes based on how we make decisions, that's how we present a message in our communication, whether it's a web page or direct mail piece. The challenge is sometimes we're excluding some of these key persona types that we're not able to influence because we're not incorporating them. So just going through the matrix of this diagram here, the competitive persona types really are interested in a very quick, short answer. They want to understand why you're the best. What's the bottom line in a very succinct statement? These folks prefer to search, they don't browse, and they're not going to read a lot of detail. They just want to understand a short statement why you're the best. Moving over to a more emotion-based case, but still on that fast and quick, the spontaneous types are interested in why they should choose you now. Sometimes they may have more buyer remorse involved because they make choices quick. In terms of influencing them, factors like how it can be personalized for their needs and style, using their name, emails that include their name helps out with that. The methodical types are interested in the process, saying like 1, 2, 3, 4, here's the process, here's how much time is going to be involved for each of those points. And the humanistic types interested in more of who used it, not the what or the details, but they're more interested in others than themselves. So incorporating these into landing pages can make a huge difference. On a recent campaign, we saw a 30% reduction in bounce rate and over 3 times the engagement, with the actual time on site radically increasing because we specifically planned the content on the page to make sure all 4 persona types were being included. Next on to elements of the page, of making sure that if you have a landing page that you've accounted for what really needs to be on there. And in its simplicity, if you think about what is the user going to get, why they're going to love it, and how they can get it, of incorporating those pieces in there. This is a list that at 3D we recognize when we're planning out landing pages. So there is no magic template per se, but there are elements that help out when planning these pieces to lay out. So as a sample, here's just kind of a mock-up of the layout of just a very slim header. Key difference on the landing page is that you cut out traditional site navigation that would be on a regular web page, because those are actions which serve as distractions. And you just lay these different components out to make sure, okay, we accounted for what all needs to be on here. And these elements also serve those persona types previously mentioned to make sure have we accounted for those pieces. There's lots of different ways that these elements can be laid out. We even print these out, and oftentimes we'll cut them out and rearrange for different ideas for testing scenarios that we can lay out. Your call to action is a key piece to be optimizing. Sometimes there's multiple actions that are presented on the page. If you really want to optimize conversion, you really want to set one purpose for the page and have one call to action that's included there, and presenting that as an obvious button is a key piece, so that when they see the page, it's the first thing they see and also the last thing they remember in planning. Additional actions on the page can potentially reduce conversion by 50%. So if you have here's the sign up for this, or another button for download this piece of the different pieces, each time that's distracting by the conversion. So really focusing on that one purpose is going to help you get the most conversion. When you're planning it out, make sure also that other content on the page is serving that call to action and that purpose. If you have multiple call to action cases or purposes you want to achieve, separating those into a different landing page or a different campaign would be ideal, so that you can make sure that what they see is that call to action. A complementary color for the call to action is also key, and by complementary I'm referencing the color wheel. So if you're imagining what's opposite, that's the complementary reference there on the color wheel, so that it stands out as being the most obvious thing on the page. And then reserving that call to action color to only be for the call to action, so it maintains that ability to stand out and really pop on the page. Here's a quick checklist when you're planning out your call to action, making sure that it's obvious, that when they get to the page they can see right away, this is my next step or action to take. Specific, when you see submit, submit, what does that mean, and who wants to submit? It's not very engaging or persuasive. So if it's download this guide or request a quote, but also supporting it with the why of the value added. So if you're trying to entice them to download that, of the what's the why or value behind it, of the that they could start, in your case, converting more leads. If it's for the user, to begin appreciating your home with more beauty, or having a clear view of your gorgeous yard. Those components, but making sure that's there. In this example here, we've recently been testing a little bit more with buttons that have 2 lines in them, where a lot of times one line was more common. So sometimes you can flip the what and the why. So convert more leads today is more of that why point, and the what is the download the guide component. You can flip these around to test if, maybe the download the guide being more strong converts more versus the value added below it. It doesn't need to be the value portion, or the Y portion doesn't need to be inside the button. It could also go just below the button depending upon where those pieces are, but those are good aspects to test. Reserving that call to action so that no other colors on the page use it to help it stand out. Ensuring that there's a clear path and even a directional cue. In this case, I've got the arrow example to help guide their iPath to see that that's the step that they need to take next, and then supporting it. So if you're asking them to do a particular action, supporting it with a confidence booster, something right below it as to, what are some of the next steps, visual insights as to, hey, if you do this, this is what you're going to get. 90% of the landing pages I've evaluated fail to use an optimized call to action with the reserved complementary color. So I'd say this is your big action item from this webinar, is to go through your materials, your website pieces, and identify, have you clearly defined what the call to action statement is on those materials or on that web page, and has it been presented with a complementary or opposite color on the color wheel piece so that it optimally stands out. So if you've got a blue page, opposite on the color wheel, some color wheels vary, but that's why red is most common as being a button, because blue is the easiest color on the human eye, so it's most commonly used. It doesn't mean red is the best. So if your site, is yellow, if your site is green, of evaluating, what's going to stand out most. Go back to your materials and identify how you can make that quick and easy update. When it comes to web forms, a lot of times we tend to get greedy because we want a lot of data, right? We want as much info as possible about the prospect so that we can try to prepare a response for them and be ready to understand their needs, or possibly even with how we're going to route it to a sales rep or someone to follow up with them. And then in this example, we have the submit. So very compelling in that case, right? Because I don't know what I'm submitting here. So when you're thinking about leads, trying to evaluate how can you really shorten that form so that all you're asking for is the least amount of information that would help you follow up, which the reality is all that is an email field. If you could just get that email and be able to respond to them, and they have interest, that's enough. But getting a little more info, possibly like zip code or name, would help. Some of these aspects involve more of a nurturing case of where you get the insight of, yes, they're interested, and you can follow up more and then gather more information about them. When you're thinking about the forms, first one easily is dropping the address. If some folks feel like that, it's providing a little too much detail, especially if they're just interested in a high-level estimate to understand, is this even in their price range? The city and state can actually be computed from the zip code using easy free tools available online. And the zip code can be defaulted from their GeoIP location, which is something that can be determined based on their internet connection from that. And defaulted because sometimes it's not fully accurate, or they may be traveling and such, so it allows them to still enter that. But just by doing that, we can reduce several fields that are on the form and help to shorten it up. So in this case, it always depends on what info you need, or if when folks are requesting a quote, maybe they have a lot of comments they'd also like to include, so possibly including message in there. But it's always the fewer fields that are on the form, generally the higher the conversion rate. Credibility. So this is a tough one, because when you're trying to say, here's why we're credible, it's always the case that your customers are always going to be more persuasive than you. So how can you incorporate more info from them to help with them and say, hey, here's why we're credible, of whether there's photos of real people showing that, hey, you're not just part of this business or corporate environment, but photos of real people, detailed specifics of how you do it, if you've won awards, different pieces, just having a respectable design, and it doesn't have to be very fancy, but respectable design, and most importantly, good reviews. So when you're looking for reviews and testimonials, the key piece that you need from that for it to be helpful in sales is to understand, for other users to understand who else used this, what was their problem, so they can say, well, yep, I have that same problem. How did they use it to solve their problem? So they're saying, okay, here's the actual solution. And then some specifics of that, of what they liked about it, if it was quality, timing, those details. It's very important to include the full name of the individual. Location is very helpful if you're targeting particular locations, because that adds more relevance, along with dates, so that they can see that, hey, it's recent, it's not like this is a review from a few years ago. Photos, sometimes clients may be reluctant to do photos, but most likely they have a public Facebook or even LinkedIn profile. So asking if you'd be able to use the photo avatar from their social accounts, they'd be more likely inclined to do that. So there's new outlets nowadays where you'd actually be able to get some of those photos to prove, yes, this is a real person, to help your prospect customers associate with them. To help them craft a good review, there's 2 sample questions that I've noted here. So when you ask for them versus just saying, hey, can you review us, to help sculpt it, think about what you specifically would like to be in there, and then put together a list of 5 or 6 questions that if they literally answered each question, they would be writing out the review. This way it can be succinct, but it also includes whether you're looking for adjectives or the case of saying, here was the product, here was the solution or the problem, to work that in there. Here's just some examples for Window World clients. When you're including a quick summary in the bold part, the snippets. In this case, when the reviews were submitted, they were able to type their name. So you can see the second example there for Dawn Anderson, showing the full name. Also provides a link so people can verify, hey, these are real people providing the reviews, which helps immensely in the credibility point, as well as showing the source of where it came from, to say, okay, this wasn't just you as a business crafting these up and making them sound pretty. Someone else submitted this online. So instant gratification is a key piece, and especially for the home services industry, of thinking about, okay, people are looking for stuff quick. They want quick answer, response, different pieces. So on the bait note, trying to think about, okay, sometimes maybe it's just a quote or different pieces, but trying to account for folks that want something now. Live chat is a great means to help to do that. So supporting the proceed to checkout option with a live chat, say, hey, how can we do it? And making sure that's personalized with a real photo and not the stock photo that might possibly even be on your competitor's site with something else. Putting in specifically why it would help. And one client case where the market had a very large Hispanic population, doing a little bit of research, we evaluated that. In that culture, it's very common where they prefer to have more of a personal relationship before doing business. So as part of the test, we said, well, let's look at how we can incorporate live chat by the proceed to checkout or purchase or quote spot. So if they feel like, well, if they could chat with a real person, they'd feel more likely to actually engage in business. And by adding that component, we actually increased conversion by over 300%, just helping to facilitate that connection of dealing with real people in person. And this is also a service that 3D provides through our call center. Also accounting for mobile users, that if we know that 95% of mobile users search for business from your phone, if you have a phone, you can realize this, hey, you're going around of where's that location, or what's the address, we're headed there now, or hey, I need to call them. That's their objective. And what's more compelling is that of those users from their mobile devices, 59% of them wind up visiting that business and 61% call. From a conversion standpoint, 99% take action within 24 hours. Wouldn't you like to get those leads converting? So in order to help you optimize for this, you have to be prepared to help them make that call and visit your business. So first point is to help them call from the mobile page on there. So this, in this case on a smartphone, you can actually make a phone number a link that when they click it, it will initiate a phone call. And you could do this technically on any web page or computers. Some of you may be familiar with Skype or other tools that's now software on the computer that's capable of actually making a phone call. All you do is select it, just like you'd make a hyperlink for something else, and then the value you enter is the TEL colon followed by the phone number with no special characters in there. Smartphones, some smartphones will automatically do this for phone numbers that look like phone numbers on a page. If you have a unique address or possibly part numbers on the page, sometimes those may show as a phone number, so it's key to specifically call out these cases where you want it to be a link. More importantly, trying to present the phone number as a button so that, just like we were talking about the call to action earlier, that when you have the phone number saying, you know, call for a quote and having the phone number in there with a note saying click to call so that it stands out as the action at the top of the page for them to make a call. Ensure that this phone number minimally is at the top of your page. Top right is ideal, and only one phone number so that they're not distracted by different phone number options. Just for sake of time, I'm going to go into our recap pieces here. So when you're thinking about pieces to start for conversion, if you really want to convert, first you need to understand the user goals. So revisiting that to say, well, what are the user goals? To understand that piece and trying to infuse those more into your goals and campaign strategies. Thinking through the landing page essentials, what are key pieces that need to be in there and nothing more so that it's very succinct. Optimizing your call to action. So again, your homework assignment is to evaluate, do you have a clear and obvious call to action on the page, and is it using a complementary or opposite color tone to ensure that it adequately stands out on the page. Simplifying your forms. Ideally, three or less fields would be great, but really not asking for more info than you need to get a lead, because the purpose is to get the lead and just get the user in the door. Evaluate your options for boosting your credibility, starting with testimonials and going out to ask them, using some of the sample questions or layout in this webinar to craft your emails to ask for reviews, and so that they're written in a way that will help aid further business. And don't discount instant gratification options like live chat or click-to-call pieces, so that, or find nearest location for mobile, so that those are obvious and readily available for users to act when they need it. That's all for today. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and connect with us at 3D Marketing. Again, my name is Angie Schott-Muller. We'd be happy to help you optimize your conversion. Thank you.
Thanks, Angie. So if there are any questions, sometimes it's tough on these broadcasts to actually ask questions while others are on. So if you have any questions, I would suggest that you do submit them to the email address that you see here. We appreciate your time again today. This event will be recorded, so if you were able to attend today and would like a copy, just send a note to sales@3dmarketing.com or to Angie's email, and we'd be happy to send you a link where you could review the seminar again at your leisure. Thanks again for your time.